Welcome to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast, where we like to just dive into some fascinating Islamic topics.
Yeah.
And today we're going on a deep dive into a collection of prophetic traditions that offer a glimpse into the future of the Muslim community.
Okay.
Specifically, we'll be talking of prophecies about a figure known as the Mahdi.
Interesting.
So our source material for this is going to be Sunan Abu Dawud, specifically Book 31.
Right.
It's called The Promised Deliverer.
Yeah, it's a fascinating section of Hadith,
It,
full of compelling and sometimes mysterious content.
yeah.
These sayings capture like anxieties, hopes, and even the political realities of the time they were uttered,
Right.
giving us a unique window into early Islamic thought and its vision of what was to come.
I think one thing that stands out right away is this whole idea of the promised deliverer.
Right.
It almost sounds messianic.
It does.
Would you say that's an accurate way to think about the Mahdi?
I mean, it's certainly an evocative title.
Right.
It really captures that sense of anticipation and hope that surrounds the Mahdi in Islamic tradition.
Right.
But it's important to remember that the Mahdi is not considered a divine figure in Islam.
Okay.
He's seen as a human being,
Oh, okay.
albeit an exceptional one, who is chosen by God to lead the Muslim community and establish justice on earth.
So not a prophet, not a messenger,
Right.
but a divinely guided leader.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the hadiths we'll be exploring today offer a fascinating roadmap of sorts,
Okay.
outlining the events leading up to the Mahdi's emergence and the nature of his rule.
Interesting.
It all starts with a fascinating prediction: the coming of 12 caliphs.
12 caliphs.
Yeah,
That's incredibly specific.
it is.
What's the significance of that number?
So hadiths 4266 and 4267 both predict that there will be 12 caliphs leading the Muslim community.
Okay.
And the hadiths emphasize that the community will agree on each of these leaders,
Okay.
a detail that speaks to a desire for unity and stability. And intriguingly, they all come from the Quraysh tribe.
The Quraysh tribe, the same tribe as the Prophet Muhammad. So
Exactly.
what's the significance of that detail?
Well, it's likely a deliberate detail connecting legitimacy with lineage.
Okay.
The Quraysh were already a powerful tribe in Mecca,
Yeah.
and the Prophet's own lineage from them undoubtedly contributed to his authority.
Right.
So by emphasizing that all 12 caliphs would also come from the Quraysh,
Yeah.
these hadiths might be suggesting a continuation of that lineage-based authority.
I see.
But it's interesting to note that Hadith 467 mentions an uproar after the Prophet spoke about these 12 caliphs.
An uproar. What were people so upset about?
Unfortunately, the Hadith doesn't give us specifics.
Okay.
It simply states that people raised their voices,
Oh, okay.
suggesting some disagreement or concern.
I see.
We can only speculate about the reasons for this uproar.
Right.
Perhaps some people question the emphasis on the Quraysh tribe,
Right.
seeing it as an exclusionary criteria for leadership.
Makes sense.
Or perhaps they were anxious about what would happen after these 12 caliphs,
Okay.
a concern that's addressed in the next hadith.
So we've got 12 caliphs from the Quraysh.
Yeah.
And some people are clearly worried about what happens next.
Right.
So what does Hadith 4268 tell us?
It tells us that after the time of the 12 caliphs, turmoil will prevail.
Okay.
It's a very brief statement,
Yeah.
but it's packed with suspense.
I can imagine.
Imagine hearing this prophecy for the first time.
Right.
You've just been told about a period of stability under 12 leaders,
Yeah.
and now you're being warned about impending chaos.
Right.
It definitely creates a sense of anticipation and perhaps even some dread.
Yeah. Like a cliffhanger in a suspense novel.
Exactly.
We know turmoil is coming, but we don't know what form it will take or how it will affect the Muslim community.
Right.
So what happens after the turmoil?
Well, that's where the figure of the Mahdi comes into focus.
Hmm?
Hadiths 4269 and 4270 introduce us to this promised deliverer who will emerge from the Prophet's family to restore justice to the world.
Wow.
Hadith 4279 states that even if only one day remained of this world, Allah would prolong that day to raise up this man from the Prophet's family.
Sounds like the stakes are incredibly high.
They are.
The world is on the brink, and only
Yeah.
this descendant of the Prophet can save it.
Right.
What else do we learn about him from these hadiths?
Hadith 4269 goes on to say that this man's father will have the same name as the Prophet's father, Abdullah, which means servant of God.
Okay.
This detail isn't just a coincidence.
Right.
It reinforces the idea of a spiritual lineage connecting this future figure back to the Prophet Muhammad.
I see.
And then comes the powerful imagery.
Okay.
The hadith says, "This man will fill the earth with equity and justice, just as it has been filled with oppression and tyranny."
So it's like a complete reversal of fortune,
Yeah.
a dramatic shift from darkness to light.
Right.
And it's all thanks to this individual who carries the legacy of the prophet. Now, you mentioned that there are different versions of this hadith.
I did.
How do they differ?
Some versions focus more on the Mahdi's lineage,
Okay.
emphasizing his descent from the Prophet's family.
Right.
Others highlight the name connection, stressing the shared name with the Prophet's father.
Got it.
But regardless of the emphasis, the core message remains consistent.
Okay.
A just ruler related to the Prophet will eventually appear to cleanse the world of oppression.
I see.
Hadith 42270 echoes this message,
Right.
reinforcing the promise of a just leader who will bring peace and righteousness to the earth.
So both hadiths paint a picture of a world in desperate need of justice.
Yeah,
A world that's crying out for a savior figure.
right.
And that savior is going to be someone who carries the bloodline and the spiritual legacy of the Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly.
Do we know anything else about this Mahdi?
We do.
Okay.
Is he just an abstract concept, or are there more specific details about him? We
No.
do get some more specific details. Hadith 4271 reveals that the Mahdi will be a descendant of Fatima's, the Prophet's daughter.
Fatima. She's a very significant figure in Islamic history.
She is.
Why is her lineage so important in this context?
Well, Fatima is revered as a symbol of piety, strength, and unwavering faith.
Right.
She was the Prophet's most beloved daughter and the wife of Ali ibn Abi Talib,
Yeah.
the fourth caliph and a central figure in Shia Islam.
Right.
Linking the Mahdi to her lineage adds another layer of spiritual authority to his anticipated arrival.
Okay.
It's not just any descendant of the Prophet.
I see.
It's a descendant from a very specific and revered line,
Got it.
one that carries immense weight within the Muslim community.
Okay, so we're getting a clearer picture of who this Mahdi is supposed to be.
Right.
He's a descendant of the Prophet, specifically through his daughter Fatima.
Yes,
And he's destined to bring justice to the world.
that's right.
Do we know anything about what he looks like?
Well,
Is there a physical description that people can look out for?
Hadith 4272 actually offers some physical descriptions of the Mahdi.
Okay.
It states that he will have a broad forehead and a prominent nose.
A broad forehead and a prominent nose.
Yeah.
Those seem like pretty specific details. Why are they included in the hadith?
Well, they might seem like minor details,
Right.
but they actually serve a very important purpose.
Okay.
They humanize the Mahdi.
Okay.
By providing physical characteristics, the Hadith makes him more relatable.
Right.
He's not just an abstract concept anymore.
Yeah,
He's someone you could potentially recognize in a crowd.
I see.
It's almost like these descriptions are preparing people to identify him when he appears.
Yeah, it's like the hadith is saying, look out for someone who looks like this because he's the one who's going to change the world.
Right.
It's a very powerful way of making the prophecy more immediate, more tangible.
Exactly.
Is there anything else mentioned in Hadith 4272?
It also states that the Mahdi will rule for 7 years.
7 years.
Yes.
Is there any significance to that?
Well, the number 7 holds a lot of significance in many cultures and religions,
Yeah.
often representing completeness or perfection.
Okay.
Perhaps in this context, it's hinting at the idea that the Mahdi's rule will be a period of complete and perfect justice,
Okay.
a time when the world is fully aligned with God's will.
So 7 years to change the world and establish a reign of justice.
Yes.
Definitely raises questions about what can be accomplished in that time frame and what kind of legacy he will leave behind.
Right?
So far, we've covered several hadiths that introduce the Mahdi
Yeah.
and give us some basic information about his lineage, his appearance, and the length of his rule.
We have.
But I'm curious to know more about the events leading up to his emergence.
Okay.
Are there any hadiths that provide a more detailed narrative?
There is one hadith that does just that. Hadith 4273.
Okay.
It offers a more detailed narrative, almost like a scene-by-scene breakdown of how things will unfold,
A what?
leading up to the Mahdi's appearance and the establishment of his rule.
A scene-by-scene breakdown. This sounds epic. What does Hadith 4273 tell us?
Well, it starts by painting a picture of political turmoil.
Okay.
The hadith mentions that there will be a disagreement at the death of a caliph.
Okay.
We don't know which caliph this refers to,
Got it.
but it clearly sets the stage for a power struggle within the Muslim community.
Right.
This disagreement will lead to a man from Medina fleeing to Mecca for safety.
Fleeing to Mecca.
Yeah.
That's the holiest city in Islam.
It is.
It sounds like this man is seeking refuge in a sacred space,
Right.
perhaps hoping for protection or divine guidance.
Yeah, that's a very insightful observation.
Thanks.
And it seems that his presence in Mecca triggers a significant turn of events.
Okay.
The hadith tells us that some people from Mecca will force this man from Medina to become their leader,
Wow.
swearing allegiance to him between the Kaaba and the Maqam Ibrahim.
Wait, so they're forcing him into leadership.
Yeah.
That's a pretty unusual way to come to power.
It is.
It seems like a desperate move, as if they believe he's the only one who can lead them out of whatever crisis they're facing.
It certainly is.
Okay.
It suggests that this man, despite his reluctance,
Yeah.
possesses certain qualities or a reputation that makes him appealing as a leader in this time of turmoil.
Right.
But his ascent to power doesn't go unchallenged.
Oh, no.
The hadith tells us that an army will be sent from Syria to attack him.
Right.
But this army will be swallowed up by the earth in the desert between Mecca and Medina.
Swallowed up by the earth. That's incredible. It sounds almost like divine intervention.
It does.
A supernatural event that signals this man's legitimacy as a leader.
It's definitely a dramatic and evocative detail.
It is.
One that's open to interpretation.
Right.
Is it a literal event, a miraculous sign from God?
Right.
Or is it symbolic, perhaps representing the utter defeat and disappearance of the opposing forces?
Yeah.
Whatever the interpretation, it's clear that this event has a profound impact.
So this man from Medina goes from being a reluctant leader to having his authority seemingly confirmed by a supernatural event.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Well, the hadith tells us that after this, righteous people from Syria and Iraq will come to Mecca and swear allegiance to him between the Kaaba and the Maqam Ibrahim.
Okay.
It's as if this miraculous event has convinced them of his legitimacy,
Right.
prompting them to abandon their previous loyalties and join his cause.
Wow.
It's a dramatic shift in the political landscape.
It sounds like the world is being reshaped,
It does.
aligning itself around this new leader who has emerged from chaos and seemingly divine intervention.
Yeah.
It's almost like the stage is being set for something even bigger to happen.
You're absolutely right.
And-
And that brings us to the next part of the narrative,
Okay.
which introduces a new character.
Oh,
A man from the Quraysh tribe whose maternal uncles belong to the Kalb tribe.
okay. A new challenger appears. Where does this Qurayshi man fit into this story?
Well, the hadith tells us that this Qurayshi man will send an army against the leader from Medina,
Okay.
but his army will be defeated.
Wow.
This conflict is referred to as the Expedition of Kalb,
All right.
and it seems to be a significant turning point in the narrative.
Why is this expedition of Kalb so significant?
Well, the hadith emphasizes the spoils of war from this expedition,
All right.
the booty of Kalb,
Okay.
stating that those who don't receive a share of this booty will be disappointed.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder what exactly this booty represents.
Yeah.
Is it just material wealth, or is it something more symbolic?
Yeah.
Something that represents power, influence, or even spiritual rewards?
It's a fascinating detail that adds another layer of mystery to the narrative.
It does.
What is this booty of Kalb?
Right?
Is it a literal treasure, or is it a metaphor for something more profound?
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to keep that question in mind as we continue our deep dive.
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that this expedition of Kalb seems to mark the final obstacle before the leader from Medina fully consolidates his power and establishes his rule.
So this Qurayshi man and his army are defeated, and the leader from Medina is victorious.
Right.
What happens next? Is this when he finally reveals himself as the Mahdi?
Well, the hadith doesn't explicitly state that he is the Mahdi,
Okay.
but it does describe his actions in a way that aligns with the Mahdi's mission.
Okay.
After his victory, he divides the spoils of war,
Okay.
governs the people according to the Prophet's Sunnah,
Right.
and establishes Islam throughout the earth.
Now that sounds like the Mahdi.
Right.
He's defeating his enemies,
Yeah.
establishing justice,
Yes.
spreading Islam.
Right.
Is this the fulfillment of the prophecy we've been discussing?
It certainly seems to be heading in that direction.
Yeah.
The hadith specifies that he will rule for 7 years and then die, after which the Muslims will pray over him.
7 years, just as the previous hadith predicted.
Exactly.
That's a powerful image. This leader emerges from turmoil, overcomes challenges, establishes a reign of justice, and then dies, leaving behind a legacy of peace and righteousness.
It's a compelling narrative,
Yeah.
and it raises many questions about the nature of leadership, the role of divine intervention, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil.
Wow.
But before we delve further into those questions,
Yeah.
it's important to note that there are some variations in the narrations regarding the length of his rule.
Variations, what do you mean?
Some versions of this hadith mention 9 years instead of 7 for the duration of his rule.
Yeah.
Hadiths 4274 and 4275 actually address this discrepancy,
Interesting.
with Hadith 4274 mentioning 9 years,
Okay.
while Hadith 4275 mentioning 9 years, while Hadith 4275 states that the version narrated by Mu'adh, which mentions 7 years, is more accurate.
So we have multiple versions of the story with slight variations in the details.
We do.
Does that mean we can't be sure about the exact length of his rule?
It's more about understanding that these narrations were passed down through oral tradition,
Okay.
and slight variations are bound to occur. Right.
But what's important is the core message,
Right.
which remains consistent.
Okay.
A just ruler will emerge from turmoil,
Yeah.
govern according to the prophet's teachings,
Got it.
and bring about a period of peace and justice.
So it's about focusing on the big picture, like the overall theme of the prophecy,
Right.
rather than getting bogged down in the minor details that might differ between versions.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that interpreting these hadiths requires careful consideration of the context and the different chains of narration.
Right.
It's a complex and nuanced process,
Yeah.
one that has been debated by scholars for centuries.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the 12 caliphs to the turmoil,
Yeah.
the mysterious booty of Kalb,
Right.
and the arrival of this just ruler who might be the Mahdi.
Right.
Are there any other key points from these hadiths that we should touch on before we move on?
There are two more hadiths in this collection.
Okay.
Hadiths 4276 and 4277.
That offers some interesting insights and additional details about this prophetic timeline.
Let's hear it. What do these final hadiths tell us?
Hadith 4276 actually addresses something that you might have found puzzling in the previous hadith.
Okay.
Remember the part about the army being swallowed up by the earth?
Oh, yeah.
It did raise some questions about how that could happen and what it means for those involved.
Yeah, you're right. That part did make me wonder.
Yeah.
How could an entire army be swallowed by the earth against their will?
Right.
And what about their individual fates?
Yeah.
Are they all considered to be on the wrong side, even if some of them might have been forced into joining the army?
Those are excellent questions.
Yeah.
And Hadith 4276 offers some clarification.
Okay.
It explains that while everyone involved in that event will be physically swallowed up by the earth,
Okay.
they will be judged on the day of judgment based on their intentions.
So even though they were part of an army that was opposing this divinely appointed leader, their individual intentions will ultimately determine their fate in the afterlife.
Exactly.
That's a really important distinction.
It is.
It reminds us that outward actions aren't always a reflection of inner intentions,
Right.
and only God can truly judge a person's heart.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message about individual accountability and the complexity of human motivation, even in the midst of such dramatic and seemingly clear-cut events.
Right.
It suggests that even within a group that's deemed to be on the wrong side,
Yeah.
there might be individuals whose hearts are pure and whose intentions are good.
That's right.
It's a reminder that we should never judge others based solely on their actions or their affiliations.
Yeah.
We can't know what's truly in their hearts, and ultimately it's God's judgment that matters.
Absolutely.
And then we have Hadith 4277,
Yes.
which introduces yet another figure into this prophetic narrative.
Right.
A man named Al-Harith ibn Harath, who will come from Mawara Anar, a region beyond the river Oxus in Central Asia.
Okay.
Al-Harith ibn Harath. Another character enters the scene.
It's getting complex.
This is getting even more complex.
Yeah.
What is his role in all of this?
Well, he seems to be an ally or at least a supporter of the lineage of the prophet.
Okay.
The hadith states that Al-Harith ibn Harath will bring an army with him,
Okay.
and this army will be led by a man named Mansur.
So Al-Harith ibn Harath is the figurehead, but Mansur is the one who's actually leading the army.
Right.
What do we know about Mansur?
The hadith describes Mansur as a pivotal figure who will play a crucial role in supporting the prophet's family.
Okay.
It doesn't explicitly state how he will do this,
Right.
but it suggests that he will be a key player in the events leading up to the establishment of a just and righteous rule.
Supporting the prophet's family. Does this connect back to the Mahdi in some way?
It's possible.
Is Mansur part of the movement that will ultimately bring the Mahdi to power?
It's certainly possible. Okay.
The Hadith doesn't explicitly link Mansur to the Mahdi,
Right.
but the emphasis on supporting the prophet's family suggests a connection to the broader theme of the Mahdi's arrival and the establishment of justice.
I see.
It's as if these figures, Al-Harith ibn Harath and Mansur,
Yeah.
are paving the way for the Mahdi's eventual rule,
Okay.
creating the conditions that will allow him to emerge and fulfill his destiny.
It's like they're part of a divine plan, playing their roles in a grand cosmic drama that's unfolding according to God's will.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And what about the believers? Do they have a role to play in all of this?
Hadith 4277 concludes with a powerful call to action,
Okay.
urging all believers to help Mansur in his mission.
Got it.
It's a reminder that the fulfillment of prophecy isn't just a passive process.
Right.
It requires the active participation of those who believe.
So it's not about just waiting around for this to happen.
Right.
It's about doing something to actually make it happen.
So what exactly are believers being asked to do? Are they supposed to join Mansur's army, or are there other ways to support him?
The Hadith states that every believer must help Mansur,
Okay.
either by actively supporting him
Right.
or, as some versions suggest,
Yeah.
by responding to his sermons and spreading his message.
Okay.
It's a call to action that emphasizes both physical and spiritual support.
So it's about aligning oneself with the forces of righteousness,
Yeah.
contributing to the movement that will ultimately benefit the Prophet's family,
Right.
and potentially even help to usher in the era of the Mahdi.
That's a very astute observation.
Yeah.
And with that call to action, we come to the end of this fascinating collection of hadiths.
Wow, what a journey.
It is.
We've covered so much ground in just this first section of Sunan Abu Dawud's The Promised Deliverer.
Yeah.
From the 12 caliphs and the impending turmoil,
Right.
to the mysterious booty of Kalb
Yeah.
and the emergence of figures like the man from Medina, Al-Harith ibn Harath and Mansur,
Right.
all weaving together a complex and compelling narrative about the future of the Muslim community.
Yes.
It's amazing how these hadiths manage to create a sense of anticipation, hope, and even a bit of mystery.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
These hadiths aren't just dry historical records or theological pronouncements. They're stories
Yeah.
full of vivid imagery, dramatic turns of events,
Right.
and thought-provoking themes that continue to resonate with Muslims today.
It's like a puzzle that we're trying to piece together,
It is.
using these fragments of prophecy to glimpse a future that's both hopeful and uncertain.
And that's part of what makes them so fascinating.
It is.
We'll be continuing our deep dive into these prophetic traditions in the next part of this episode,
Okay.
exploring the figure of the Mahdi in even greater detail and trying to understand what his arrival might mean for the world.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm already hooked. Join us for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the mysteries of the Mahdi and try to unravel the meaning behind these ancient prophecies.
I'll be here. Welcome back to our deep dive into the prophetic traditions surrounding the Mahdi.
I have to say, after that first batch of hadiths, my mind is kind of swirling with details and images.
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie unfold, but, there are multiple possible endings.
Right.
Like, which one is it going to be?
That's a great way to put it. These narratives have captivated Muslims for centuries, precisely because they offer a glimpse into a future that's both hopeful and uncertain.
It's true.
Yeah.
And speaking of captivating, let's talk more about the Mahdi himself.
Okay.
I mean, we've learned about his lineage, his physical description,
Right.
his mission of justice.
Right.
But what else can we glean from these hadiths about, who he is and what his arrival signifies?
Well, that's where we move from the realm of historical details into a more interpretive space.
Okay.
We have to ask ourselves, what do these prophecies tell us about the anxieties, the hopes, the fears of the early Muslim community?
Yeah.
And how do those themes resonate with us today?
Right, because obviously these hadiths were revealed to a specific community at a specific time.
Right.
But they still have meaning for us today.
They do.
So, okay, let's unpack some of those interpretations.
Okay.
What are some of the key themes or ideas associated with the Mahdi's emergence?
Well, one of the most prominent themes is the idea of divine intervention in times of turmoil and injustice.
Okay.
The hadiths we discussed in the previous segment
Yeah.
describe a world filled with oppression, conflict, uncertainty.
Right. Sounds familiar.
It's against this backdrop that the Mahdi appears not as a conquering hero,
Okay.
but as a restorer of balance.
So he's not coming in with, guns blazing.
No,
He's coming in to set things right,
exactly. He's coming to restore harmony, to bring peace,
to bring justice.
to bring justice.
So it's like he's a response to the suffering and injustice that humanity endures.
Right,
He's not just a political leader.
right.
He's almost a savior figure.
It's important to be careful with that term savior,
Right, of course.
as it carries different connotations in different faiths.
Of course, yeah.
But you're right to point out that the Mahdi's emergence is seen as a sign of God's mercy,
Okay.
a restoration of balance to a world that has lost its way.
I'm also struck by the timing of his arrival.
Okay.
It's always after a period of turmoil or crisis,
Right.
as if things have to get really bad before they can get better.
That's a recurring pattern in many prophetic traditions across different religions.
Right, true.
The idea that there needs to be a period of darkness,
Yeah.
a testing of faith
Right,
before the dawn of a new era.
right.
It's a powerful narrative arc that speaks to the human condition,
Yeah.
our capacity for both great good and great evil.
I feel like we're living in that time right now.
It's certainly a time of great upheaval and change.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it's not just about punishing the wicked or restoring order.
No.
It's about giving humanity a chance to rediscover its true purpose,
Right.
to realign itself with God's will.
Precisely. And that's why the Mahdi's rule is often described as a golden age,
Okay.
a time of peace, prosperity, and spiritual flourishing.
So it's not just about, outward peace and prosperity.
All right.
It's about inner peace and spiritual growth as well.
It's about a holistic transformation of both individuals and society.
A utopia of sorts where justice and righteousness prevail.
In a sense, yes. It's a vision of a world where those values are paramount.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, it's important to remember that different Islamic schools of thought
Right.
have different perspectives on the nature and extent of this golden age.
Of course.
Some interpretations are more literal,
Okay.
focusing on the political and economic implications of the Mahdi's rule.
Right.
Others are more metaphorical,
Yeah.
emphasizing the spiritual transformation that will occur within individuals and within society as a whole.
Oh, right. We were talking earlier about how interpreting these hadiths can get quite complex.
Yeah, it's a rich and multifaceted topic.
It is.
Yeah.
So how do different schools of thought view the Mahdi's role?
Well, let's start with Sunni Islam,
Okay.
which is the largest branch of Islam.
Right.
Within Sunni Islam, there's a general emphasis on the Mahdi's role as a political and military leader.
Okay.
He will establish a just and powerful Islamic state,
Okay.
expanding its influence and bringing the world under the banner of Islam.
So for them, it's about a very literal and tangible manifestation of Islamic governance.
Yes.
A return to the kind of power and unity that existed during the early days of Islam.
Exactly. They often point to specific details in the hadiths, like the descriptions of battles,
Right.
the division of spoils of war,
Yeah.
the emphasis on establishing Islamic law to support this interpretation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
It's about creating a world where Islamic principles are not just beliefs,
Right.
but are also reflected in the political and social structures of society.
Exactly. It's about creating a society that embodies those values in a concrete and tangible way.
Now, within Shia Islam, which is the second largest branch of Islam, the understanding of the Mahdi is a bit more nuanced.
It is.
While they also believe in his role as a political leader,
Right.
they place a greater emphasis on his spiritual significance.
They do.
So how so? What's their perspective?
For Shia Muslims, the Mahdi isn't just a future leader.
Yeah.
He's the culmination of a long line of divinely appointed imams
Okay.
who are believed to be the rightful successors to the Prophet Muhammad.
Got it.
These imams are seen as not only political leaders, but also spiritual guides
Right.
who possess special knowledge and authority.
So the Mahdi is the 12th and final imam in this line.
Exactly. And for many Shia Muslims, the Mahdi's arrival isn't just about political change.
Okay.
It's about a deeper spiritual transformation,
Okay.
a revival of true Islamic knowledge and spirituality.
Got it.
They believe he will cleanse the faith from distortions and reestablish a direct connection between humanity and God.
So it's less about outward conquest and more about an inward revolution.
Precisely. It's about
So-
transforming hearts and minds. Creating a society rooted in justice, compassion, and a profound understanding of Islamic teachings.
That's a powerful idea.
It is.
It's about changing the world from the inside out, starting with the individual and then radiating outward to create a more just and compassionate society.
Exactly. And this inward transformation is seen as a necessary prerequisite for the outward changes that the Mahdi will bring about.
Okay.
He can't establish a truly just and righteous rule unless the people themselves are also just and righteous.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that many Shia Muslims believe that the Mahdi is already alive
Yes.
and is currently in occultation.
Right.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Yes. This is a key difference between Sunni and Shia beliefs about the Mahdi.
Okay.
Shia Muslims believe that the 12th Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi went into occultation in the 9th century CE.
Occultation. What does that mean?
It means that he disappeared from public view,
Okay.
but is still alive and is guiding his followers from behind the scenes.
Okay.
It's like a state of hiddenness,
Right.
where he's protected from harm and is waiting for the right time to reappear.
So he's like a hidden king, a spiritual leader who's waiting for the right moment to return and claim his rightful place.
That's a good analogy. And for many Shia Muslims, the Mahdi's arrival represents not only a return to justice,
Right.
but also the culmination of their long wait for their imam to reappear.
Wow.
It's a deeply significant event
It is.
that's intertwined with their understanding of history, their faith, and their hopes for the future.
It's amazing how one figure, the Mahdi, can hold such diverse and layered meanings
It is.
for different groups within Islam.
Yeah,
It speaks to the richness and complexity of Islamic thought
it does.
and the different ways in which people interpret and apply these prophetic traditions.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even within a single faith, there can be a spectrum of beliefs and interpretations.
Of course.
And that's something to be celebrated, not feared.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's about approaching these topics with humility, curiosity, and a willingness to engage with diverse viewpoints, even if we don't always agree with them.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that these different interpretations aren't necessarily contradictory.
Right.
They can complement and enrich each other,
Yeah.
offering a more complete picture of who the Mahdi is and what his arrival might mean.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the Mahdi's arrival is often associated with a golden age.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about what that golden age is supposed to look like?
Okay.
What are some of the specific features or characteristics that are often mentioned?
Well, as we've discussed, the specifics can vary depending on the interpretation and the school of thought.
Of course.
But there are some common features that are frequently mentioned.
Okay.
One of the most prominent is the establishment of universal justice.
We've touched on that before.
We have.
It seems like that's a core element of his mission.
It is. The hadiths emphasize that he will fill the earth with justice as it has been filled with oppression. This implies a complete eradication of injustice and the establishment of a system where everyone is treated fairly and equitably.
So it's a total overhaul of the system.
Yeah, it's about a fundamental shift in the way society operates.
Right.
It's not just about individual acts of justice.
Okay.
It's about creating a truly just system
Right.
that benefits all of humanity.
So it's not just about punishing the guilty.
No.
It's about creating a society where injustice simply doesn't occur in the first place.
Exactly. It's about addressing the root causes of injustice.
Okay.
Poverty, inequality, discrimination.
Yeah.
And creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Wow, that's a tall order.
It is,
Right.
but that's the vision that these prophecies paint.
Can you give us some examples of what this might look like in practice?
Certainly, in terms of economic justice,
Okay.
it's often envisioned that poverty will be eliminated
Okay.
and wealth will be distributed fairly.
Right.
There are hadiths that mention an abundance of resources during the Mahdi's rule, suggesting that everyone's basic needs will be met.
Okay.
No one will go hungry, no one will be homeless,
No.
everyone will have access to the essentials of life.
So it's a vision of a world where material resources are no longer a source of conflict or hardship,
Right?
but are shared equitably among all people.
Precisely. And in terms of social justice,
Okay.
it's often envisioned that discrimination and prejudice will be eradicated. People will be treated with respect and dignity,
Right.
regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, religious beliefs, or any other factor that has historically been used to divide and oppress.
Yeah.
It's a vision of a truly inclusive society where everyone feels a sense of belonging and worth.
It's a powerful vision of equality and inclusivity.
It is.
One that speaks to our deepest longings for a world where everyone is treated with fairness and compassion.
And in terms of political justice, it's
Okay.
often envisioned that the Mahdi will establish a government based on righteousness and consultation.
Oh.
Decision-making will be transparent and participatory, ensuring that everyone has a voice and that power is not concentrated in the hands of a few.
So it's a very different model of governance than what we see in many parts of the world today.
It is. It's a vision of a government that serves the people rather than ruling over them.
So it's not just about having a single righteous leader.
No.
It's about creating a system of governance that embodies the principles of justice, and accountability.
Exactly. It's about creating a political system that reflects the values of Islam.
Right.
Fairness, compassion, consultation, the pursuit of the common good.
Wow.
It's about ensuring that the government is a force for good in the world rather than a source of oppression or corruption.
It's a lot to take in all these different facets of the Mahdi's rule.
It is.
The political, the economic, the social, the
It's
spiritual.
a comprehensive vision of transformation.
It's almost overwhelming to think about the scale of the changes that are being predicted.
It is. But I think it's important to remember that these prophecies aren't meant to be blueprints for action.
Okay.
They're meant to inspire hope, to point us towards a better future,
Yeah.
and to remind us that even in the darkest of times, a brighter dawn is possible.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the spirit of these prophecies.
Yes.
Their underlying message of hope and transformation.
Right.
And then using that inspiration to guide our own actions in the world.
Exactly, because ultimately, these prophecies aren't just about passively waiting for a savior to arrive.
Oh, okay.
They're about recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and compassionate world.
We're not just observers of history, we're active participants.
We are.
And these prophecies can serve as a reminder of our shared responsibility to work towards a better future.
And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the Mahdi's significance,
Right.
the different interpretations of his role, and the vision of a golden age that's associated with his arrival.
It's been a very dense but very interesting conversation.
It had.
Yeah. So we spent the last two segments really unpacking, this whole concept of the Mahdi,
Right.
his lineage, his mission, the different interpretations of his role.
Yeah,
All fascinating stuff.
it is.
But I keep wondering how all of this relates to the world we live in today.
Right. That's the crucial question, isn't it?
It is.
These prophecies aren't just ancient stories tucked away in books.
Yeah.
They continue to shape the way many Muslims view the world.
Right.
And their place in it.
It's not just about, history or theology.
Right.
These hadiths have real-world implications for how people live their lives and make decisions.
Absolutely. For many Muslims, the belief in the Mahdi's eventual arrival is a source of hope and inspiration,
Yeah.
especially in times of hardship or injustice.
Right.
It's a reminder that even when things seem dark and hopeless, God has a plan,
Okay.
and that justice will ultimately prevail.
It's like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
A promise that things will eventually get better.
exactly. And that belief can be a powerful motivator for action. Okay.
Encouraging people to work towards creating a more just and equitable world,
Yeah.
even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
So it's not about just passively waiting for the Mahdi to show up and fix everything.
Oh.
It's about actively striving to make the world a better place, knowing that a brighter future is possible.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's where the real-world implications come in.
Okay.
For some, these prophecies inspire them to engage in social activism, to fight for the rights of the oppressed,
Right.
to work towards political reform.
Yeah.
They see themselves as playing an active role in preparing the world for the Mahdi's arrival.
It's like they're laying the groundwork, building a foundation of justice and righteousness,
Yeah.
so that when the Mahdi does appear, he can build upon what's already been established.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's about creating the conditions for a more just and equitable world.
Yeah.
And for others, this belief manifests in a focus on personal spiritual development.
Right.
They strive to purify their hearts,
Okay.
to align their actions with God's will.
Yeah. Believing that by becoming better individuals, they're contributing to the overall spiritual upliftment of humanity,
Right.
which is seen as a prerequisite for the Mahdi's emergence.
So it's a multifaceted impact.
It is.
Inspiring action on both the individual and collective levels.
Yeah,
It's about working towards a better world, both internally and externally.
exactly. And it's important to acknowledge that the belief in the Mahdi has also at times been invoked
Yeah.
to justify political movements or even violent uprisings.
Right.
It's a reminder that even the most hopeful of beliefs can be twisted and distorted for harmful purposes.
A sobering thought.
Yeah.
It's like any powerful idea.
Yeah.
It could be used for good or for ill, depending on the intentions of those who wield it.
Unfortunately, that's true. Throughout history, there have been individuals or groups who have
Wonderful.
claimed to be the Mahdi
Okay.
or have used the belief in his coming to legitimize their actions,
Right.
often with disastrous consequences.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical thinkers, to engage in dialogue and debate,
Yeah.
and to be wary of those who exploit these beliefs for their own gain.
It's about discernment.
Mm-hmm.
recognizing the potential for both good and harm,
Right.
and being careful not to let hope blind us to the potential for manipulation.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember that these hadiths,
Yeah.
while offering guidance and inspiration,
Yeah.
shouldn't be taken as blueprints for action.
Right.
They offer broad principles and themes,
Right.
but the specifics of how to create a more just world are left open to human interpretation and action.
So it's not about blindly following a script.
No.
It's about understanding the spirit of these prophecies,
Right.
their underlying message of hope and justice,
Yeah,
and then applying that message to the challenges of our time.
exactly. And that requires creativity, adaptability,
Yeah.
and a willingness to work together across differences to find solutions to the complex issues facing humanity.
Definitely.
It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in shaping the future, regardless of our beliefs or backgrounds.
It's a reminder that creating a better world isn't something that's going to be done for us.
No.
It's something we have to do together.
Now, something else I think is worth considering
Okay.
is the relevance of these prophecies in a multi-faith, increasingly secular world.
Right.
These hadiths are rooted in Islamic tradition,
Yeah.
but how do they resonate with people from other faiths
Yeah.
or those who don't subscribe to any religion?
That's an interesting question. Do these prophecies have any meaning or relevance outside of an Islamic context?
Well, while the specifics of the Mahdi's arrival might be unique to Islam,
Okay.
the underlying themes of justice, peace, and the triumph of good over evil are universal aspirations.
Right.
They speak to a deep longing within the human heart, a desire for a world where righteousness prevails and where suffering is alleviated.
So even if someone doesn't believe in the Mahdi's as a literal figure,
Right.
they can still connect with the broader message of hope and transformation.
Exactly. And there are many parallels between the Mahdi and Islamic tradition
Right.
and messianic figures in other faiths,
Yeah.
like the Messiah in Christianity or the Moshiach in Judaism.
Yeah.
These figures represent a hope for a future
Yeah.
where peace and justice reign and where humanity is redeemed.
So it's about recognizing the shared human longing for a better world
Yes.
and finding common ground in those aspirations, even if our specific beliefs differ.
Precisely.
Yeah.
These prophecies can actually serve as a starting point for interfaith dialogue,
Right.
for exploring shared values,
Right.
and working together to address common challenges.
Yeah.
They can help us to see beyond our differences and to recognize the common humanity that binds us together.
It's about building bridges of understanding and collaboration,
Yeah.
even in the face of differing beliefs, and finding ways to work together to create a world that reflects our shared values.
And I think that's a key takeaway from our deep dive into these prophetic traditions.
Yeah.
They're not just about predicting the future. They're about inspiring us to create a better future together.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive observers of history.
Right.
We're active participants in shaping the world we want to live in.
And with that, I think we've reached the end of our exploration of the Mahdi.
Yes.
We've delved into his lineage, unpacked his mission, explored various interpretations,
Right.
and contemplated the enduring relevance of these prophecies in the modern world.
It's been a very enlightening journey.
It has.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure being here.
and for sharing your insights on this
Yeah.
fascinating and complex topic.
Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, I hope you found it as thought-provoking as I have.
I hope so too.
And I encourage you to continue exploring these prophecies,
Yeah.
their meanings,
Yes.
engage in thoughtful discussions,
Absolutely.
and consider how these ancient teachings can inspire us to create a more just and compassionate world today.
That's what it's all about.
Thank you for listening, and until next time.